Welcome to the Market.Sell.Win podcast. Today, I am thrilled to have with us Jenny Macchione, the senior web designer at WTTW in Chicago, which is the most watched public broadcast station in the country. Jenny has spent her entire career, which spans more than 25 years, as a graphic designer in the print and digital worlds. In our 4-part interview, Jenny is going to talk to us about her career journey, her process for designing a web page, her process for approaching web page layout, and her perspective on how people can best work with web designers. In this first segment, we will focus on Jenny's career trajectory, the skills that she's found to be important, and the impact that mentors have had in shaping her career. So welcome to the show, Jenny.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Of course.
So part of what we're trying to do on our podcast is show that there's not necessarily a direct route for our careers. I think people start out, or they don't start out going, I want to be a senior web designer at a nonprofit. And
right.
It's important that we realize that, we have to be flexible and really kind of adapt to things that come our way throughout our careers. So can you tell us about the path and the steps that you've taken to get to where you are in your career?
Sure. So it's true. I did not grow up saying I wanted to work for WTTW or PBS. What I wanted to do is to work with color and typography, and I knew that when I was a little kid. And I found out eventually that graphic design was the best path for that. And I'm still doing that, which is so much fun.
So even as you were a little kid, tell me about the color piece, like crayons?
Well, my dad's an architect, so I would always go into his supply closet and look at his markers and take them home. And different color swatches he would use for his renderings. And he had this thing called press type, which is something only really old people know about, of which I am. And this is before any computers. And what you would do is just rub off individual letters to make words.
Wow.
And it took about 900 years, but it was so fun. And I fell in love with it. So I guess that was where I was exposed originally.
So then how did that progress? Like, was there a focus in college then?
Yeah, I went to a really small high school, so our art department was not much of anything. I may have taken 1 year of art, and I can't draw to save my life. So it's really not about that. It's more about having a good eye for composition. And my mom had an advertising agency, and one of her designers went to the University of Cincinnati, and her name was Susan, and she took me to a senior show there 1 year, and I fell in love. And the best thing about Cincinnati's design program is they were the first in the country to do the co-op program. So after your first 2 years, you would go to school for 3 months, and you would work for 3 months, and you'd go to school for 3 months. And it was a 5-year program, and by the time you were done, you had a year and a half of actual practical experience. And that was everything to me.
I can imagine. I mean, we don't have enough of that nowadays to get real-world experience, so you kind of don't dip your toes until you're out of college.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. It's not that hard to achieve. There are people, there are companies, there are designers that really want to mentor, and they really can use the help for small projects. So that's what the college kids are there for.
Yeah, exactly. So then once you got out of college, where did you go from there?
Okay, so I graduated into one of the worst economies we ever had. So I actually went and worked for my mom's ad agency for a couple of years. And that, I felt kind of like it was a cop-out. But then again, I learned so much about medium-sized city projects. I mean, I did stuff for our symphony orchestra and our local Ohio State University branch. So these were real projects. And when I finally got the gumption, I moved to Chicago and did a few print jobs, but eventually fell in love with the web design.
And so from a web perspective, is that kind of where you really, after your mom's agency, got your feet deep?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's so much more fun because it's so much more instantaneous, and the mistakes you make aren't etched onto paper. They're quickly fixable. So I like that freedom. I like the seat of your pants kind of design. And yeah, I wasn't going to go back to print. That was for sure.
And so continue on. So you started then in web, and I mean, you've been at WTTW for 12 years, so that's a significant part of your career.
Yeah, it's so much fun that I haven't sought much else since 2007, and I'm good with that. But my first web job was a small startup, and I worked on the first Wrigley gum site. I worked on Sears.com. I worked on the software side of Sears. We did the first Sears website. It was all new. The technology wasn't great. Nothing looked very good. But it was all about what you could do online. You could buy things. You could see entire catalogs. It was all new. It was really fun.
Yeah, I was on the other side of that as a consumer.
Right.
It was like, ooh, there's this crazy thing called the World Wide Web. And so I would imagine that was a pretty big shift going from print to digital.
Yes. There was a learning curve, but people were very understanding because everyone had to do it.
Right.
There weren't that many established designers to begin with, so.
Yeah, so the bar wasn't, we were all starting out, the expectations weren't high because we didn't know what we didn't know.
No, we didn't feel bad.
Right. So I guess, what's a day in the life look like now as the senior web designer?
Oh, wow. Let's see. Well, it's a perfect combination of I'm local programming. We do a lot of Chicago-based things, but I also have my hands in things like Downton Abbey and Masterpiece Theater and Nova, Nature. I get to use all of their photography, and so we do local things that kind of team up with the national shows. Mm-hmm. So it's the perfect combo of my own creativity mixed with existing art, existing shows, existing like graphic standards, and I like it that way. I like to have some sort of impetus and inspiration to start all projects.
So oh, sorry, I was just going to say, is that what the focus is then? I mean, you spend your days designing websites, web pages, landing pages?
I mean, it's a huge part. A huge part of the job now is social media. I do a lot of banners for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We are getting a lot of feedback from our audience via social media, so that's the way to go. I do advertisements, digital ads, but I would say still the bulk of my work is actually designing pages for websites. Interesting.
So I guess as you maybe think about where you're at in your career and the skills that you need, I mean, there's the technical skills, but talk to me a little bit about some of what I'll call the softer skills in working with others and those that are important.
Yeah, I'm good at those. I'm not. People say you should pick a career, pick a trade. I did that, but my university was also liberal arts, so everything that was required of a basic liberal arts education was required of us too. I know how to spell. I have pretty good grammar. Hopefully, I haven't betrayed that idea in this podcast so far. I think I know how to talk to people pretty well. I have manners. It's amazing. Those are things you take for granted. But not really here because, gosh, I work with a ton of smart people. But you do see a lot of, I don't know. This is going to sound really old lady-like, but you do see a lot of the reading, writing, arithmetic stuff that doesn't happen anymore. And I know my husband's a teacher, and he says they don't even want to teach writing anymore. And I think being able to write is huge and communicate.
Totally agree. I mean, that's a big part of my day is, and it's not like formal communications, but a lot of email writing and, explaining a situation or trying to maybe influence others as to, why we're looking at one approach versus another.
It's a true skill, and I'm very proud that I think I'm pretty good at it. So.
Yeah, I think. How about on the communicating front? What about like presentation skills? And I don't mean necessarily standing up with a PowerPoint, but like the ability to get up in front of a small group or a large group.
I don't know PowerPoint. I might be the last person on this planet, and I'm okay with that. So,
actually, you're lucky.
I always get nervous if I have to present, and then everyone says, "Oh, you did so fine. You did fine. You did really well." So I don't know if it's kind of an introvert nature I have that I don't think I'm going to do well, but apparently, I guess it always goes okay. And these are human beings you're talking to. They're forgiving and they're humorous, and everyone has the same goal to create something great. So no one's going to hold it against you if you flub up a tad.
Right. And it's kind of interesting. Sometimes I've felt the same way. And then I look at somebody who may be in a more senior position and I listen to them speak and I go, they're just a human being. They they did a nice job. They, maybe they were not as critical of themselves if they flubbed up on their words or, it just didn't come out the way they wanted it to. And I'm like, okay, they did it. I can do it.
Yeah, no. And you move on. It's fine. It's always fine. Never, things you dread tend to never be anywhere near what you think they're going to be. They're almost always good. So I'm optimistic about that sort of thing.
Well, I think that's a good way to be. And, I've always kind of taken the approach in my career and my personal life is, you give your best. And if you give your best, then there's nothing to regret.
Yes.
Because you tried.
Yes.
So,
yep.
Words to live by.
Very good.
So tell me a little bit about the role that mentors have played in your career. It sounds like perhaps Susan, going back to your college days, was one.
Yeah. She was a local person who also knew she liked graphic design. I probably would not have known about Cincinnati's program if it weren't for her. I keep in touch with her a little bit. She's still in print design. But I definitely consider her the person that exposed me to the education side of my love for color and my love for type. So,
any other folks that you've been affected by throughout your career?
Probably my dad. He also went to Cincinnati, and he's an architect. I told you about his supply closet. I know that sounds silly, but I'm a sucker for a supply closet. I still am. If they would just tell me where the pads of paper and pens were here, which they shouldn't because I will be in there immediately. No, but I guess my dad, yeah. Anyone else? No, those are the two main people I would say.
And that's, I think, it's funny. I was talking to a person who's on the sales side of the sales and marketing world, and he too had been influenced by his dad. And I think, our parents, sometimes we don't realize it until we're much later in life, what an impact they've had on shaping who we are.
Yep.
So, and not only in career choice, but, style of interacting with people and, really powerful stuff. If you've had a good influence, I suppose there's plenty who have not been as fortunate, but.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been really enlightening. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. I hope it's helpful for our listeners just to see, what somebody's path is like and, what life as a web designer is like. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.